Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, TheFreeRotation Nation. We are here again for another installment of the lovely podcast. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite true crimes / mysteries / really confusing stories, which is the Somerton Man. If you're familiar with this, which you should be if you like true crime, because it's been covered by every podcast known to man. Everybody has talked about the Somerton Man.
Except us.
Yeah, except us. And it's one of my favorites, so I just want to talk about it because it's really interesting.
This is starting our true crime series, guys. We're going to be talking about true crime because, why not start doing true crime? Because those are really popular podcasts.
No, they're fun. And
people love it.
You get to speculate, and it's interesting.
And they cut off her head. And then he cut off her arms. And then he cut off her legs. And then he cut off her waist. That's good stuff.
I don't...
What? Whatever. Drink a soda.
We have very different true crime.
Yeah. But we've got a twist in our true crime because it's all going to be unsolved true crime.
Yeah, because there's nothing scarier than knowing that somebody who was killed, nobody ever found their murderer.
That's true. And I will go ahead and tell you with the Somerton Man, it may not even be a homicide. It could very well be a suicide.
That's
no one's
true.
entirely sure.
So there is a trigger warning from suicidal stuff in it.
Well, so there's not. It's just no one knows.
Yeah.
It's not like he left a note or there's anything.
You know what? Let's tell the story. Chris, tell the story. Get people in the mood.
Somerton Beach, which is outside of Adelaide, Australia, about 6:30 in the morning, there are two gentlemen out riding horses. Apparently this was a common occurrence in Australia because no one is surprised that two guys are just riding their horses on the beach.
Haven't you read a romance novel before?
Yeah, I think they were just like farmers that were out taking their horses for a ride. Like they were just two guys that just happened to be out for a ride.
Yeah.
They pass a gentleman sleeping on the beach. His head is up on the seawall. Like if you've been to the beach and you understand what a seawall is, it's basically a wall so that if high tide comes in, it doesn't destroy everything behind it. It's just like a breaker. Mm-hmm. His head is resting on the seawall. He's laid out. His legs are straight out. He's got his left arm is pointed straight down, like it's just resting beside him. His right arm is 90-degree angle, like laying on his stomach, like he passed out. They don't think anything of it. They ride past. A few minutes later, they ride back, because I guess they're going back to whatever farm or township or whatever they have. I don't know. They have horses. He still hasn't moved. So they start talking to him like, hey, bro, you alive.
What's up, homie? You been sleeping?
He still doesn't move. They decide he's either very, very drunk or very, very dead. So they go get the cops. Cops come by, determine that this gentleman is no longer alive, which in itself is...
I didn't do that. I did not do that. I'm sorry. I legit did not do that.
Okay, listeners. As soon as Chris said this gentleman is very, very dead, the lights in the room dimmed to an unearthly
red.
red.
So we have like hue lights set up. I always like to add a little bit of some ambience. We had a nice beach color going, and then suddenly it just dimmed to darkness. So yeah, that was scary. All right, continue on, guys. No, just continue on.
So the cops show up. This he's wearing a suit. He has a tie. He is very well groomed.
Justin Timberlake.
He doesn't appear to be. As far as they can tell, there's no gunshot, no knife wounds, no cuts, no anything. He's just dead. They get him back. They start doing the autopsy, whatever. They start going through all his stuff. They find that all the tags inside of his clothes have all been cut off. All of them. There's nothing identifying about this man at all. There's no wallet, which is, I'll go and tell you, as a man, you pretty much carry your wallet everywhere. And this was 1948, so after the war, probably would have had a wallet, especially since, and we don't think about it, but in Australia, they were still rationing things.
Yeah.
Because there was a shortage of stuff due to the war effort. So you would have had to have your ID to pretty much get anything you needed. Mm-hmm. So him not having an ID, whereas we don't think about it as like maybe he just left it somewhere. That's not really a thing back then. You had to have it. So no ID, no tags on his clothes. No nothing. The autopsy looks at his hands. Doesn't appear to have any calluses. Doesn't look like he's been doing manual labor of any kind. They note that he has very broad shoulders and very strong calf muscles. and his toes are sort of pointed as if he's been wearing like tight boots or like ballet slippers.
Yeah. Kind of think what women's feet look like from wearing high-heeled shoes.
Yes. But
didn't they also say there was like there was no visible bodily injury to
nothing.
them? Yeah,
I mean,
it just was
absolutely
a body.
nothing. He just died.
Yeah, and he was very, very well dressed.
Yep.
And he had an unsmoked cigar on his collar.
So he had a cigarette behind his ear, a half-smoked cigarette that was kind of like laid on his cheek where he had died. They think just fell out of his mouth. They think he was smoking it when he died, and it just fell out. During the autopsy, they noticed that his spleen was 3 times its normal size. His heart was normal size. His liver had extra blood in it. A lot of his capillaries, a lot of his major blood vessels had extra blood in them, as if he was just filled to the brim with blood for whatever reason.
Vampire.
I actually think that's probably what killed him. I think they gave him like a blood thickener. And,
Ooh.
I mean, cause your heart to stop beating, and then you just die. It doesn't look like anything.
Could have even been in a cigarette.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. But what makes this interesting is not just that there's a dead body on a beach that no one can identify and that has no identifying body. Nothing. They run his fingerprints. Nothing comes back, which means he's clearly not Australian because they would have had his fingerprints, especially a male at that age. They estimate his age is somewhere between 40 and 45, so his birth year was probably around 1905 at this point. They still just don't know. His fingerprints don't match anything. The Australian cops describing as having a very British look, which is a thing, I guess.
Probably teeth and stuff.
Well, that and one of the things they used to identify him was the way his hair was combed. So in Australia at this point, it was very, very in vogue to comb your hair to the side.
Right.
Americans all comb their hair back. Like the men had it straight back.
With no part in the back.
Yeah, just straight back. And all his hair was combed that way.
Yeah.
And it's not something people in Australia did.
Right. He looked British but wore American fashion.
Well, they were able to. So later on, after they start trying to identify him, a month goes by, and they have an unchecked suitcase at the rail station that the cops come across. They find out it was checked on November 30th, 1948, so a day before he died, or a day before his body was found, and no one's touched it. They assume it's his, they open it up and go through it, and the thing's perfect. Like, it's not scuffed up, like he's been traveling. They say it looks like a brand new case that he put stuff in and just dropped off at the station. They find, there's an aluminum comb in there that is American made. There is a plastic comb in there that's American made. There are some pajamas that were from the U.S. There is an orange thread that you couldn't buy in Australia. It wasn't for sale in Australia. It was made in the U.S., but it was actually army or military issue. It was part of what was called the Housewives Kit, and it was just this orange thread covered in wax that you could use to just stitch stuff up,
including yourself. Also,
hit the buttons on his suit he was wearing. They found out had all been cut off and reattached with this thread for no one knows why. It's just whatever.
He repaired his pants with it.
Yeah, there was a small stitch seam in there. But everything that they found was from the U.S. They found a couple ties in his briefcase. One of them had T. Keane, the letter T, .Keane written on the back of it. They also found the word Keane written on something else in there, but it was just Kean. So it's two different spellings of Keane.
Yeah.
Which makes me think somebody else wrote it. You don't misspell your own name. That's just not a thing.
Especially if you're a spy.
Yeah.
You're not going to misspell. So some people were thinking, oh, he's trying to confuse people. No. No. I agree with you. It was somebody who set that shit up.
Yep. So a few months after he's dead, and they find, this thread and all this stuff that belongs to probably him. There's like a bus ticket in there. There's just a bunch of everyday
bus
items.
Ticket never stamped.
Yeah. So there's a discrepancy on whether or not it was used or not, but most people agree that it probably wasn't. But there's just everyday. There's a straight razor, a razor strop, toothbrush, toothpaste, pajamas, like an extra tie, extra pair of. The things that aren't in there is there's no pants and no shirt, but there's pajamas and like things you would use if you were staying the night somewhere. Yeah. So a few months go by. They recheck this gentleman because they still aren't sure who he is. He doesn't match any missing persons. His fingerprints aren't in any kind of database. They check the UK and Australia, and he doesn't show up on either one. America apparently doesn't have a database quite the same as the UK and Australia yet, so they don't check the US ones. But he's not in the UK or Australia's database for fingerprints. They start checking his pants, and they find a tiny little sewn-in space on the waistband of his pants where there's a tiny little piece of rolled-up paper.
This, to me, was the craziest part, is that after doing all of this extensive stuff, they're like, let's just double-check one more time.
Well, yeah, and it goes back... I mean, I'm not saying anything 40s. Bad about the coroner, but...
Right.
Well, so the coroner wouldn't have checked all that. That should have been the cops. The coroner would have just basically checked his body.
I thought coroner checked clothes, everything that came in on the body.
If they think there's a reason to check them, they will, but a lot of that's supposed to be gone through by the cops. They're supposed to go through the pockets and a bunch of that crap.
Would you like me to answer that question? Yeah. Because we do a lot of body, murders. The GBI will check. It's if it comes in on a homicide, the medical examiner, this is Georgia specifically, will check the clothing and all of that stuff. But anything further for testing, they'll send out to the other side of GBI to do it. But the medical examiner is supposed to do at least a preliminary overview of the clothes to make sure that there's nothing identifiable for DNA or anything to that effect. But this is in 2022 GBI Georgia, so.
And I'm wondering if the cops pretty much thought it was a suicide from the jump.
Yeah.
If they just didn't care.
Yeah.
But they find this little pocket. Sewn into it is a tiny little scrap of paper that has been ripped out of a book. And inside, they open it up, and it's the words Tamam Shud. Tamam Shud is the ending words of a book called the Rubaiyat, which is 11th century poems from Persia, I think, somewhere in the Middle East.
People!
And Tamam Shud translates to basically the end or it is finished.
Mm-hmm. And the whole Rubaiyat deals with transcendence and just the ending of your mortal life and moving on. And just living.
Yeah, it's basically they used to write big, long poems, but it's basically about enjoying your life and living it as best you can.
What I found interesting was that the Rubaiyat is actually, it was considered a rare book, but in this time period, because of what was going on with World War II, everybody had a copy because, there was a lot of people dealing with the idea of mortality and the cycle of life and death. So when you hear parts of these stories and you keep hearing this, idea of the Rubaiyat being brought up, it's almost like people having... you finding a dead body with some quote from Harry Potter, and yet everybody is linked to Harry Potter somehow. And it's at the same time, most people were reading Harry Potter at the time. So I thought that was interesting.
He just finds a piece of paper that says Leviosa.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh!
It's the Chamber of Secrets.
Lumos.
Well, so the cops find this. They post it in the paper. A gentleman comes forward, says he had been at the beach. He had found a copy of the Rubaiyat in the backseat of his car, takes it to the cops. The cops look at it. The words Tamam Shud have been ripped out of the back page. It matches. This gentleman he was just a local guy. They think somebody just chucked the book in the back of his car after they ripped it out.
Which is weird considering if you're looking at it from the perspective of a suicide, that's... You would have to gather that the guy literally ripped it out of the book, threw it in this guy's car, sewed it into his pants, and then killed himself. That's a lot. So
not only that, but here my theory is I don't think the note was for him. You don't hide your suicide note that way. I think it was for other people as a warning. That to me makes way more sense because I think you would assume the cops would find it.
Right.
But you don't hide your suicide note that way with no explanation, no nothing, just it is finished. Yeah, It's just if you're looking at it from the perspective that this was self-inflicted, it's just such a weird circumstance for it to be... Yeah, either this guy's a genius and trying to screw with everybody, or he wasn't.
Yeah, he was super over-exaggerating everything, and he was like, I'll keep it close to my pantaloons. How I must die. I mean, it's just weird, So sorry.
No, you're
thought it
fine.
was weird.
So on the back seat of on the back page of the Rubaiyat is also there's a woman's name. Her name is Jessica. There is her, or it's not her name. It's actually her phone number to where she lives.
Yeah.
There is what they assume is a cipher of some sort, which is a bunch of letters. It's supposedly 3 lines, but it's really 5. 2 of the lines have lines like crossed through them, and they're indecipherable letters. Cryptographers, code breakers have looked at it, so there's not enough to go off of to actually break it unless you have a key, which we don't, supposedly. I don't know. But her phone number's on the back. They call it, track her down. Her name is Jessica. She's a nurse that lives literally a block and a half away from where his body was found. They bring her down to the police station and to identify what is now known as the Somerton Man, because no one has any idea what his name is. They show her a plaster cast of his face, because apparently that's a thing they did, because you couldn't just leave meat laying around.
It's just weird because they did have this like picture of him, and they're like, you know what? Let's just do a plaster.
Yeah.
Like, why did you just not show the picture?
Anyway,
Just whatever.
they show her the cast. The story is she goes basically like white as a ghost, looks like she's gonna faint, and says she doesn't know who it is. The end. The police say, okay, seems fair. She asked the cops to keep her name out of any official documents because this will ruin what she does for a living, to have a connection to this. I don't know how that would be possible as maybe a witness or something, but okay. The cops agree, which really
hinders
everything because no one knows who this witness was that they brought in for the next 60 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how extensive this becomes at some point. That
to the point that they just exhumed his body.
Yeah.
May 21 last year to
DNA tested.
Yeah.
But I mean, that to me is the crazy. Like, it's just bad policing with more bad police. It's like, you know what? It seems a little weird that you kind of got like really upset about this guy you don't know. But if you don't want us to mention your name, that's totally fine. Like, what?
Well, even so, like, I will give her the benefit of a doubt of maybe seeing the face of a dead body kind of freaked her out. However.
Or maybe seeing
a
co-worker of hers silenced. We don't know what was said to the police behind the scenes either.
Nope.
You're going to keep this fucking secret.
So you also have to remember this is 1948. This is right after World War II. There are a lot of Nazis and a lot of Russians running around doing a lot of illegal shit.
Yeah.
They're
not posting on Instagram at this point.
Yeah, Operation Paperclip. We're running Operation Paperclip to steal as many of the Nazis as we can. Nazis are running to Russia. They're running to South America. There's a lot of not only spy work being done, but fear of spy work being done. People are scared. Like, Cold War is really kind of in effect now, and no one knows what's going on. This is the beginning of the populace believing that the Russians can brainwash you. It's probably not a thing at this point, but they really believe it. We're still, in America, we're still running MK Ultra experiments at this point, trying to brainwash people.
And closing borders and shutting the world out. I mean, that was a big thing that the U.S. did.
So you have to remember, it's not peace, love, hippie time. This is right after World War II. And there are a lot of nefarious people getting around. So the main theory becomes that this gentleman's a spy because of the lack of any identifying markers, the fact that he has traveled to Australia from the U.S. ostensibly. They don't even know if he actually came from the U.S. or just got a bunch of stuff from there.
Because they did, there was a sequence of events that led them to think he was military from the U.S. And so they go and they check all the U.S. records for this name they've discovered. And nope, nothing. No records in the U.S. military with his fingerprints or anything. Now,
what I think, and I'll be honest, is after World War II, the Red Cross was helping a lot of people leave Europe. Via the Catholic Church and the Red Cross were really shipping people out a lot. I'd be willing to bet the American Red Cross, I think they could have probably got their hands on these, like, housewives kits. Could have gave him a bunch of stuff that was from the U.S. Probably not his.
Right.
But, like, just here's, people donate stuff.
Yeah, like, not inferring that necessarily he came from the U.S., but because there were items that maybe during the war he had accumulated at that point. Or could have just been planted on him.
Or they just could have gave it to him and said, hey, we're shipping you to Australia versus wherever. That's actually what I think I really am of the opinion this dude ends up being either German or Russian. versus British or American or Australian. I think he was. My idea is that he is a maybe not like a high up Nazi, but a Nazi that has run and someone has tracked him down. You have to remember during this time, a lot of the Israelis they're really tracking down these Nazis that are on the run and killing them. I mean, that's what they're doing. That's what I think happened. I think he was a Nazi that had escaped via the Red Cross, and they were like, yeah, not quite. I'd be willing to bet that the Jessica lady may have also been, whereas maybe not his wife or girlfriend, with him. Like, travel together, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good link later on. She also had been in the military, which you don't hear about in a lot of the stories.
Well, a lot of them don't know who she is.
Yeah.
For years, they don't know who she
right.
is.
So you're trying to learn, but she was asked about the Rubaiyat.
Yep.
And she's like, oh, yeah, I bet I gave one to this guy.
She gave one to a gentleman, what's his name, Thomas? 2 years earlier, blah, blah, blah. And
he calls her up, and she's like, I'm married now. We can't get back together.
Yeah. That's a whole weird thing. And then later on in life, her daughter comes forward and says that her mom...
Oh, yeah.
Is a Russian spy.
Knew Russian and would teach Russians how to speak English.
Mm-hmm. And would speak on the phone, but always secretly. And told her daughter, yes, I knew the man who died, but I'll never admit to it.
Yeah, she flat out said that I'm not going to tell anybody who he was.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be willing to bet it was something on the lines of Operation Paperclip that happened here. And I think that's why she wouldn't identify any kind of knowledge of him.
Right.
Well, she didn't want what happened to him to happen to her.
Yeah. And a lot of people think that potentially, he was killed as a warning to her and other people in this profession, whatever it was, to not get emotionally attached.
I think it was just them killing him. I think he had run from, honestly, Germany, and they had tracked him down, which is why I think she was so worried.
I thought he looked German in the picture. I was like, he looks German to me.
I kind of had the inclination. I really thought with the other version of why people think that he is because of the way his calves were shaped and all of this stuff, and that he wore high heels, that he was possibly a ballet dancer. That was a big thing in Russia. Like, the Russian ballet is a huge thing in this time period. So if he's Russian, he could have worked for Russia, been a ballet dancer, and been an operative of it, and this was his way of being taken out.
You know what else he also had? An unusually shaped ear.
Oh, yeah, he did.
And you know who else had all of these things?
Her son.
Oh.
No, I think the boots and the calves thing, or the toes and the calves thing, is boots. I think of it as like, you'd think military guys run miles in boots, and it'll fuck your feet up, and it'll shape them to whatever it just is what it is.
But with the idea that they were saying it was like a man wearing women's high heels, that's a lot of what you see with ballet dancers.
So it is, but they also said it could be just from tight boots. And if he had been running miles in them, it's going to do the same thing. Anything that binds your feet is going to...
He was secretly Anastasia.
My thing is, like, if you have a ballet dancer that's known enough to travel the world, his disappearance would raise headlines somewhere. Somebody would notice it.
I just wouldn't know if it would worldwide, though, at that time. You know what
Probably
I mean?
not worldwide, but if he was famous enough to travel to Australia, if you have, like, this male ballet dancer, it's not Baryshnikov. Again, there weren't many of them.
Yeah.
And the ones that did travel the world were really good.
Yeah, but I wonder sometimes if it's, like, other, like, not, like, well-known ballet dancers, but somebody who maybe had worked in the ballet industry or something to that. I don't know. I just think it's an interesting theory. Mm-hmm. But this has been an ongoing story for years.
Since 1948.
It's crazy.
Well, Jessica had a son, supposedly with her husband, but he bears unusual features. His name is Robin. He's a ballet dancer with unusual calves and the same unusual shaped ear, and he looks pretty much like the dead guy.
Pretty similar.
At the time, I think they did identify that she was unmarried at the time of his pregnancy, based on his birth date, that she probably wasn't married at the time of this.
Yeah.
So there is an idea that this Jessica or Joe, they called her Joe too.
Jessie Joe.
Yeah.
Jessie Joe Thomas.
They said that stories say that they could have been lovers, and that there's some bearing resemblance to this child being his, and now... however many. This to me is the craziest part. You explain it better because I couldn't remember exactly how this worked.
Well, there was a professor at a college who started looking into it, and he's the one who I think initially found the link to Jesse Joe.
Yep.
And so he wanted to look for Robin, who unfortunately had died the year before in 2009. So he found Robin's daughter, went, invited her to dinner. They talked for 3 hours, decided to get married.
It's the weirdest.
They've been together ever since.
Yeah, they're still married.
Yeah.
But they've also agreed to do DNA testing.
Yes.
To find out if it was...
Well, he had found 3 hairs on the plaster cast.
Yep.
And, well, that's what BuzzFeed said. I didn't see that anywhere else, but they did get DNA from the plaster cast.
Yeah, but even then, like, it's a plaster cast. And so one of the problems you have with this guy is his body, other than his head, the rest of his body had been clean shaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything else other than his hair.
Right.
Like, on his head.
And they had him embalmed before they buried
Yeah.
him. And the reason, like, people get embalmed is because it breaks down the protein and sugar in your body, so bacteria has nothing to feed off of.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that, you get rid of DNA when you're embalmed.
Yeah.
So they
They
can
can-
exhume him. But now, like, back then in 2009, 2010, we didn't have what the DNA... They had to have a huge sample of DNA.
Now they don't.
Yeah.
Now you don't even see it.
Yeah, now...
No, we talk about like true allele and just having a little bit of DNA under fingertips to be able to identify somebody who's a potential or not a homicide victim, but somebody who committed a homicide.
Yeah.
See, and I think... I'm not worried about the formaldehyde. I think they could probably drill his teeth.
Yeah.
The roots on his teeth.
Like,
and get
there's
it.
tons of stuff we
Yep.
could do now.
I mean, to me, this is legitimately like how unsolved mysteries will be solved in the future.
Yeah.
Is this familial DNA that they're able to extract DNA from somebody who may be a relative or somebody who has inherited some sort of genetic disposition from this person. They're able to match it.
Yeah.
That's why Ancestry.com is such a big thing right now. I mean,
they're catching killers
they're
from
catching
it. It's the
killers.
Well,
best.
in 3 days from now, we still won't have a name for him.
No.
But we might have a familiar connection.
Yeah, so that's the thing is even if the genetics come back that they were related, we know that they're related. That
we know
had-
Jessie a hoe and she lied.
Yeah, she was just lying for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But if they're not, we're still left in the dark about anything about this
Yeah.
guy other than he was either killed or killed himself by means unknown. And the end, like, he was
They
dead.
may be able to trace back now his DNA to others outside of that, though, like
Yeah.
looking for familial links. I mean, they do it all the time now.
Well, and they can trace her ancestry to say, oh, it was definitively from this country.
Yeah.
Like, what country is her, heritage from on, like, the 123 me?
1, 2, yeah.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
23andMe?
Yeah, that's it. 123
1, 2, 3 and me?
1, 2, 3 hit me. That's a lot
That's a
of
lot of hooked on phonics right there.
That's a lot of DNA strands right there. 1, 2, 3 and me.
a lot of pairs.
I mean, we ended up solving a 20-year-old rape by just with DNA 20
Yeah.
years after it happened.
Yeah,
But that's the thing with technology is it progresses. I think within the next 10 years there will be an answer to who this person is, just based on the ability now to trace back DNA and all that
they're
stuff.
exhuming his body and pulling DNA, so they'll at least have a link to something.
Yes.
And it took them a while because in Australia, you can only exhume bodies of, like, X or Y. So
Yeah.
they had to go through the courts to get Z exhumed. And I can't remember what the other two were. Like, military persons and something else.
Yeah, but
But
they
you-
don't know if he's military or
Yeah,
not. They
but
don't
you
know
couldn't
anything
just...
about him.
Exactly. You couldn't just exhume to exhume. So they had a fight to get his body exhumed.
Yeah. But it is one of those mysteries. I didn't really know a lot about it. I really hadn't heard a lot about it, surprisingly. But it's one of those things where there's just so many unanswered threads that you just... But there's so many logical connections that any story you go with could pretty much be the right story.
Yeah, and there was someone who came forward and said there's 2 poisons that could have been used to cause this.
Well, it was the coroner.
Yeah.
And he said he didn't want to say them out loud because people would take them and start using them. And one of them was...
One was digitalis.
Yeah, digitalis.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
can't remember the other one.
It's like Thera something.
Yeah.
Could have easily been in the
Theraflu.
cigarette he was smoking. Which, I mean, you think about it, you inhale a cigarette directly into your lungs, which then
Straight in
goes
your bloodstream.
everywhere.
Well, and if
What
it's
is-
like some sort of poison that causes a thickening agent and then degrades quickly, I mean,
Yeah,
there's no
you're
way
not
to
gonna
ever
find
trace it back.
Especially back then.
No.
I mean, I don't think they had the testing to go into your
No.
capillaries.
Basically, they said he didn't throw up, so it probably wasn't poison.
Yeah, he didn't shit himself or vomit, so...
Well, if he inhaled it and it was just in his bloodstream, he wouldn't throw up.
yeah, you're just gonna quietly go.
But they said his spleen was 3 times enlarged and his heart was normal, but there was blood like all over,
Like congealed blood
inside
everywhere.
of everywhere. And I'm like, yeah, sounds like they gave him a blood thickener and his heart
Yeah.
stopped beating.
Which, digitalis.
It just, but like I mean, and there is a lot of other theories that he just killed himself. It just doesn't track to me. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense based on what they were able to find and all of the stuff. Look, I mean, I don't know.
So there were eyewitness accounts, and supposedly, and this came out later,
right?
Tons of eyewitness accounts of this dude just hanging out at the beach.
Yeah. And one person said they saw someone carrying him down.
They saw a well-dressed man carrying someone that matched this guy's description and clothing, but that was it. They just saw some guy with some other guy slumped over his arm. Mm-hmm. But apparently the guy that was carrying him was in like a suit with like cufflinks and very nice jewelry. And it's like, where do you people live that you see mafia members carrying dead men around?
Exactly.
And it raises no questions.
Yeah.
It was, it's just...
You're riding horses on the beach, and these people didn't stand out to you?
This is Australia. Mind your fucking business.
Oh, well,
yeah.
You know what? You got a point right there.
I mean, nobody says shit.
I mean, Jesse's walking around speaking Russian, and everybody's like...
The animals are just as deadly as the people.
Yeah, well, yeah. They probably left him on the beach to be shark bait.
But there was a couple out that was walking the beach that evening, and we think about December 1st, 1948, but in Australia, that's summertime. So, like, everybody's out at the beach. It's lovely. One couple walks by, sees him laying there. He doesn't move. They walk by 45 minutes later. He still hasn't moved. This is the day before he's actually found, or that evening. That it's late that night. But they're like, oh, he must be drunk.
Out. Yeah, he's on a bender.
Huh. When I see someone passed out on the side of the road, I call the cops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Australia, mind your fucking business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It just so happened somebody was just like, he might be dead. We might need to call somebody.
Nah.
Yeah.
None of my concern. But it's just like, a lot of people saw something and then just didn't say fuck all.
No.
For whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine seeing... If I left out of this house today and I saw a gentleman carrying another gentleman on his shoulders, I'd be like, hey, man, he dead?
Yeah. Did you kill him?
I mean, I just need to know.
Or call the police, or call the sheriff and be like,
appears this man has murdered someone.
Yeah.
He's just carrying him down the street. You may want to figure out what's
carrying
going
him
on.
and he hasn't bothered to call for help.
But it seems
something's
like
wrong.
This was a lot of extra work for a suicide.
Yes.
Hiding your complete identity from everybody, hiding a note in your pants that suicides just don't leave. They don't do it that way.
Plus, nobody around the world missed him.
That's
and said, has anybody seen this? He's out on milk cartons.
Yeah, no one even reported as missing.
Yeah.
It's because somebody wanted him gone.
He was checked through Interpol. He was checked through the U.S.
It's because he was a lower level Nazi and the Israelis got his ass. Mm-hmm. I really think that's what happened.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah, when I looked at him, I'm like, that's German. That's SS right there.
It will be interesting to see what they come back with.
Think about the boots that you always saw the Nazi uniforms wear.
Tight,
yeah.
goose-stepping assholes.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to bet he was a Nazi. That's my thing.
A Nazi and a Soviet spy fell in love with each other.
I think
it's very possible.
Not only that, she may have been a German spy in Russia.
Yeah. Or she may very well have been his assassin.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way to tell.
She might have been, assigned to him and she had to get rid of him.
Wouldn't it just be sucky if this was just some dude that nobody gave a shit about and he just died and this is all just
I bet if that happened that way, he'd be happy.
People are still thinking about him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like this unsolved mystery 60 years later, and it turned out he was just some random
Meanwhile, he just
executive.
had
so the thing is,
artery problems.
Yeah.
It would be like me committing suicide that way, but going through the extra steps of making sure all my clothes have the tags removed, so you can't identify who made them. Getting items that I cannot purchase in Georgia, like somehow getting a hold of them from like Brazil. But having someone from Brazil send them to me, it's so much extra work.
I kind of wonder if you're like a drama queen, though. Like, say he's actually from, let's just say, like, hypothetically, he is actually from the United States. He's like, you know what? I want to die on the beach of Australia. And just flies out here and dies. I mean, people literally travel worldwide to go to the suicide forest in Japan to kill themselves.
Yeah, but that's a thing.
Yeah, it's also, they would have records of him on a plane.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess.
But
that's true.
They're not sure how he got to Australia.
True.
Like, there are no records of him other than the train and the bus passes that they found in that suitcase.
Yeah.
That they think are probably his, but they're not entirely sure. They were just left there.
Yeah. It's just like I said, I feel like the suicide angle and just being some random dude who just killed himself is just not a logical explanation.
Yeah.
I
think it was lazy cops who were like, yep, killed himself. How? Dunno. Dead.
Looks like he died here, y'all. It happens. So,
And judging by the way these cops did their job, by hiding witnesses' names and stuff, like, these probably were drunks. These were not the best
checking
policemen.
anything.
Yeah.
Like, I'm wondering, did you even test the cigarette dudes? No.
Probably not.
Probably not.
They probably just got thrown away.
Yep.
Yay.
But I mean, she may have been a German spy in Russia.
Yeah.
That also got sent here when shit hit the fan.
Because she kept her mouth shut for years.
Forever.
Till she died.
For a long, she's still shut.
We will never know what Joe Thompson knew.
Yeah.
This bitch.
No, I think they were both shipped here, probably by the Red Cross. That's how they got American shit. And then she was like, oh, they found us.
Gotta kill him.
I don't know. I think she just kept her mouth shut the whole time. Nope, never seen him.
Yeah.
They're not on to me.
Move.
Do-do-do.
That's probably why she insisted her name be kept out of everything.
Yeah.
It makes sense because nothing else made sense. But yeah, she's probably like, please don't tell anybody you question
We don't
me.
even know if that's a real name.
But the cops are like, okay. Like, the
Yeah.
fuck
That's
cops?
what kills me. Is it like, okay, kind of weird, but okay. Like, let's just go with the fact this woman wants nothing to do with this man. You know, it's a little strange. You know what though? I wonder if somebody some higher up in another country contacted the cops and said, "Keep your fucking mouth shut."
Maybe. It sounds crazy, but we were running Operation Paperclip. I don't know if the Australians are running a similar operation.
Yeah.
And they may have contacted the cops and been like, "Shut the fuck up." I mean, you don't know.
Get rid of her interview. Get rid of her name.
Forget it. Forget about it.
I mean, I don't know if the Australians were. I would assume they were, since most first world countries were trying to get a hold of science.
We still would have never known her name, except her daughter came forward and said this.
Yep.
I mean, what a shitty kid, first of all.
Yeah.
She did when she was dead, though.
Yeah.
Like, at least her mom had died, and she was like, hey, guys, you know, this is an interesting
Also,
little tidbit.
my mom knew Russian, surprisingly.
Yeah. In a time which people didn't know Russian just
and
before the
admitted she knew
funsies.
dead dude.
Well, that and during the Cold War, when you probably didn't want to be caught speaking Russian.
Yeah.
Of all the things to be speaking.
Weird fact. She kept a picture. She and the guy, Agan, is his last name? They have a painting of the Somerton Man that they hang up in their kids' playroom. And call him Grandpa. Grandpa Somerton.
I mean, he may well be.
He may well be.
He may not be. It's going to be funny if he's not. And they're like,
Well, this is awkward. That's not your grandpa. That's just a dead guy we've had hanging up in your playroom for years now.
Hitler's son.
Oh, jeez.
Jeez.
No, some of his kids are missing. They
all changed their name, though. Like, they don't want anybody to know they're Hitler. They've also all agreed to not have any children.
Yeah.
So the bloodline ends.
Whew, that's awkward.
But yeah, that's one of my favorite, like, real crime, unsolved mysteries is Somerton Man. Side note, there are about 7 more cases that are exactly like this. Another one happened in Australia the next year.
Yeah.
But it never got as much press. But it's the same thing. Just dead guy on a beach, no clothes, or no tags in his clothes. And they're like, yep, suicide. Move on. And I'm like, these Australian cops, top notch in the 40s, son.
Never, don't let yourself be deaded in the 40s in Australia because you will just be,
or
throat slit killed themselves.
I say that, but you think about, like, America in the 20s and 30s.
No.
They would go rob banks and shoot their name into the side of the building. Like, it was Dillinger and the Dillinger boys. Come get us, coppers. And they never caught them. And you're like, police work really has taken a step up in the recent years.
Yeah. As forensics really make a huge difference. Oh, and like cameras everywhere. You really have a hard time getting through. And that's also like just on a generality. That's why you've seen sort of the end of these like serial killer spree stories that were really plagued up until like the early 80s because forensic and cameras have made it almost impossible for anybody to get away with anything anymore.
Well, not just that, but we figured out their MOs more so and how they operate. Like, we know their modus operandi, which really slows them down.
Yeah.
And again, when these people have whatever dereliction from normal brain processes they have, if we can predict it, we can be ahead of it, which is cool.
Yeah, and generally what you find is that somebody who may be a serial killer, they get caught on the first one, and you have to have several dead before you're considered a serial killer.
I mean, I want to say the most recent like horrifying one was what, Toy Box Killers?
Yeah.
I mean, beyond them, you don't really hear about it. I mean, there are active serial killers now, but you don't hear about a lot of them. They get run down and go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Call it quits. But I think that's the most recent one I can think of that was famous and horrifying with Toy Box Killers, and that was late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There was that one in Canada, the pig farm guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Canadians.
Yeah. It's weird that a Canadian was killing everybody. But
It's about time the Canadians caught up.
They had to get it one time. Just
Yep,
once.
just once.
Alrighty. Well, that was a unsolved
you guys
mystery.
tweet us or email us and let us know your theories.
Yeah, and if there's any unsolved mysteries you want us to look at.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm totally down.
I think the Tamam Should is actually part of the what do you call it? Cipher. And
So do I. I
Yeah.
just don't think there's enough letters of what he wrote
No.
for us to figure it out.
yeah.
Or he was starting a cipher and got really sick of it and decided he wasn't going to cipher anything.
Mhm.
Well, I don't think
Where is everyone
I think he
hiding?
kind of figured out what was going on, and he may have been known he was being followed,
Yeah.
or whatever, and was trying to get a message out.
Wasn't
Yeah.
there like also a theory that it was places he had visited?
Yeah, like it was the first letter of cities he'd been to.
Yeah, but it was
Mhm.
didn't make a lot of sense either.
Yeah.
Whew. Well, one day, dude, maybe somebody will
And
solve
maybe
your
he
mystery.
was trying to give her a message. Like he put her number down so she would know, hey, this is for you.
Yeah, I wonder if, and again, it's just weird that somebody threw that book in the back of some rando's car after they
Mhm.
pulled that out.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. But yeah, that's one of my favorite unsolved mysteries. If y'all have any y'all want us to look up or look into, shout them out. I'm on board. I will research anything.
Yep. Yep. These are fun to do. If you have any information leading to the whereabouts of the Somerton Man,
We know where he is. He's in the grave.
Yeah.
Or exhumed now.
Robert,
the killer of the please call. What was her number? 333
1-800 these nuts.
I don't know, but Robert Stack's sultry voice gives me half a chubby. Whoa.
All right. Check it. Bye.
Later.
Bye. And that's how we get canceled.